So here's the piece we are starting with. It has a leather top. It's just a little table. It's very cute, but the leather, as you can see, is starting to crackle a bit. It's got quite a few scuff marks in it that just won't come out. And then of course the finish is a little bit rough. So we're gonna quickly give it a good clean, flip it over, and see what we can do with this guy. Right, so we're missing two of these little rosette deals. So I'm going to take one off and get a print of it so that I can then create two to go on the rest of this. So yeah, the screwdriver is going to be too thick. Nope, we can fit it under, never mind. Okay. Oh, it's actually a wood carving. It looked metal. Well, that means it has to get painted. I was going to leave the metal, but since it's actually wood, we are going to paint them into the piece. I'm going to go cast these real quick. So this stuff's amazing. It's called Amazing Mold Putty. I use it all the time, and I just roll it into two balls that have similar size because you're supposed to use equal amounts. And you just run it together until it's the same color throughout, and you can just take your impression, and you can use it for several other pieces, not just this one that I'm working on. So I'll have this mold for a while and can cast numerous rosettes from it. So I'm using a ton of colors on this piece. I'm just going to list them on the screen. I tried explaining the colors as I was going, but the neighbors were super loud. So I just blocked them out and I'm running them across the screen. You can find all of these colors at Chalk Mountain's website. So I'm starting with my darkest colors first with the table upside down. It just makes it easier on me to know that I've hit every angle of the piece. So you're going to start your first color, you're going to get it to go further down the leg than you want it to, and then that way you can blend your next color up into that, so you'll have a decent transition. So I go from black to my deep plum, and then into my indigo blue. And here's what I do on the blue, because I want that to be the easiest transition, because I'm not going to blend anything over that crazy ledge that I have there. I don't want to try and blend two different colors where there's a metal bar and a platform and screws and all that kind of stuff. So I'm making it easy on myself. I'm blending before I get to that point, and then I'll blend the next color after I pass that point. It's just something that I choose to do with all my pieces that have kind of quirky areas in them, and I know if it's going to be a tough spot to blend, I don't blend in it. I make sure that that part will happen to be a solid color, and that works out really well for me. So it's just something fun to try if you struggle blending in harder to reach areas. So then I just take this up all the way from darkest to lightest. It's a super easy blend because these colors are so friendly to each other up until the last color. So the chalkboard is a really easy color to blend into the indigo, but then from the chalkboard we go into the light yellow, which is not easy to blend into. And you'll notice I kind of use the same brush for blending. So if I'm using the blue, I blend some of the blue into the chalkboard and some of the chalkboard into blue, and I don't worry about switching up brushes. That is not the case with the light yellow. The light yellow, I use one brush for that to dip it in, put it on, I don't touch the chalkboard with it, and then I take my chalkboard brush, I will then blend that with that brush into the light yellow. And then I have a separate clean blending brush that I use to blend back and forth, because the other colors don't show up so much if you do a little color mixing, and it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal when you put chalkboard into light yellow. You really see a difference in that, and I don't want to contaminate the paint that much. I'm not too much of a stickler, but that's just too far for even me. And then I'm taking the light yellow just up on the top skirt of the table. Again, that makes it an easy blending point. I know I'm not going to blend on that. It's just much easier to keep it on the legs, so I make sure that that is, an easy blend, just like the indigo blue. And then the legs, you can kind of go back and forth, up and down, side to side. However you can get your blend to look well, that's what you want to do. So with my clean brush, this is actually the clean brush, very lightly damp, and I just, like Bob Ross says, 2 hairs and some air. That's how I want to blend this. And then as I go down, this is my second coat on it. I'm starting the blend from the top all the way down to the bottom. And that's just because it's easier for me to work from the top down. And if you get any drips or anything like that, it's going to be cleaned up once you get to the end. And I know that everything's covered because we started with the table upside down. So this is just an easy way for me to go about things. But it's all the same process. You can see the rosette on this one it's an actual kind of like plastic. That's what I ended up molding it out of, as resin. So it covers really well because it's in the black, and the black covers super easily. So I wasn't worried about getting a second coat on that because I just made sure I put the paint on really heavy there. But you could see the little white. That's because it's the white resin. And then the tabletop, it just goes straight into black. There's no blending from there, from the light yellow to the black. It's just straight into black. And that's because we're going to do something really fun on the top. You probably already know. You've seen the description and seen the thumbnail. But I'm doing a full blend in here, and that's because once I hit the decoupage stage, it's a thin paper, and I want to know that if something happens to the paper, if it goes through, if there's a hole, or if there's anything like that happens in that, and it goes through and I can see the color behind it, I want it to be cohesive, and I want it to look cool with the rest of the table, not just some weird leather top that doesn't kind of go with the whole thing. So that's why I'm taking the time to go through and do the whole blend on the top. You don't have to. You can do a solid color, and that's totally fine too. But this brings me joy, so I do it. It's just an extra step, and it doesn't take that long. And so that's what I wanted to do here. Now, the fun thing about this is when I was finished, it looked like a geode, and I thought it was so pretty, and I wouldn't have been sad if I had just kept it this way too. But I already had plans for this, so it turned into a decoupage top. But I really did enjoy the look of this once I was finished. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw it on my stories. Like, oh, it's my geode table that will not ever be a geode table again. It's fine. I'm not mad. Yeah, so here this is the thickness of newspaper. It's kind of like that, the roll of newspaper stuff that you can get, but this is a type of art paper. So I put this through my printer. I have a large format printer. So these sheets are larger than a regular printer paper, but I still had to do it into different steps. So I just put it on there with my poly, how I always do. I've got several videos of that if you need to see how to decoupage with poly. And then here I have a Cricut. I cut out little diamond stencils, and I lined them up, stuck them on, and then I just stenciled in the black diamonds with the same black as I used on the whole piece. It's called Blackboard. This worked really well, and it kind of gave it that whimsical kind of feel that Alice in Wonderland has. So if you're not familiar with stenciling, this is a really easy way to do it because I did it with the Cricut, and I actually did it with it's actually drawer liner is what I used. It sticks on really well, so I don't get any bleed through. Also, Chalk Mountain's paint is pretty thick, so long as you slightly dip it and then tap off the excess, you don't get any bleed through. Not that it would matter too much here because I end up distressing it, but it's just a good thing to think about. Ta-da! Lovely. So I did end up cutting out 3 different ones of these, and I used all 3 of them simultaneously. So I just took a little sanding sponge here and I scuffed these up. The whole table had quite a bit of distressing to it just because it's an old story, it's an old book, and I kind of wanted it to have that feel of like the antique look and just kind of worn pages. And so yeah, I went through, distressed the whole piece, made it feel old, lived in, lovely. When I did this, I didn't realize that I showed you me sanding for so long. So I'm sorry about that. And then I went through and wiped off all the sanding dust, obviously. Okay, so here's the fun part. And this was just like a kid getting to color in a color book. to start blending this in, I took my black, because we already did a base of black around the edge, and I kind of stippled it in to the illustration so that it looked like it was more a piece of the table. Now this paper isn't as thin as I would have liked, but I did like the page look that it had, so I'm happy with how it turned out. I would have been a little happier if it was thinner paper, but you do what you can with what you have. But so yeah, I just went around this and made it look with the black like it was a part of the table instead of just sheets of paper sitting on top of a tabletop, if you know what I mean. And I just went through and kind of matched it with the drawing. See how I went in over the black? He had like lines and spots to make it look like shadows, how he did his illustration. So that's kind of how I tapped in the black. I just wanted to make it look as cohesive as possible. And then as I'm stippling, I do go over, and any part that's still on the wood, I do smooth it out because I don't want it to be a textured finish on the wood at all. Okay, so I'm sealing this piece with Chalk Mountain's hemp wax. And this stuff is so fast. It's just awesome. So I buff it in with my large wax brush. Super easy. Get it all over. I love the giant wax brush because I just feel like you cover so much ground with it and it gets in like all the crevices. So as you can see on the skirt of the table, it's got like 2 defining lines above and below. They're small, but I want to make sure wax gets in there, and you can't do that with a rag very well. So the brush just gets in all the details, and I enjoy doing it with a brush. So it goes on, you let it soak it all up, and then after like 40-ish minutes, you can go back and do your first wipe off. And while I'm waiting for that, I just take all the colors that I want, and this is where it's kind of fun. You just get to choose what you want this to look like and choose whatever colors that you want. And you want to use watered down paint, so quite a bit of water, and it's totally fine to use water because the whole thing has been sealed with poly. Even if you get a spot somewhere that you don't want it, you can wipe it off because you've sealed it with poly. It's lovely. So you just want to make sure your paint's watered down enough that you can still see the black coming through. And if you find that you went too heavy-handed or anything like that, you can always go back with like a liner brush and some more black and redraw on the lines there, which I did do at the end on some spots, but for the most part it was just having fun, making sure the water was thin enough, and just pretending I'm a 5-year-old coloring. It's lovely. So I'm obviously going to seal over this again. So this piece is just, I mean, it's got a lot of layers of poly here because it's poly to put down the decoupage paper, poly to seal the decoupage paper, and then also it has, I don't show 4 coats, but it has 4 coats of poly on top of this as well. So this thing is sturdy. It will stand the test of time. The base is waxed. Like I said, it's a distressed piece, so it doesn't bother me that the base is going to keep getting distressed and everything like that, but the top is going to last because, you know, it's Alice in Wonderland. People are going to have tea parties on this thing. And it's such a cute little bistro table. I wanted it to be loved and used. And so, you know, protect it. And then here I'm taking antiquing wax, and I just went over the entire piece, even over the top with poly, everything. I went over everything with the antiquing wax, again, because I want to give it that more aged feel and look, and just have it be a little more cohesive, because the Chalk Mountain satin poly is obviously a little more glossy than a base of wax. So just by doing this extra layer of wax on top, the antiquing, it tones down the color and the gloss at the same time. So 2 birds, 1 stone. And then of course, it's not one of my videos without gilding wax, so I'm taking copper and I'm hitting all the little rosettes at the feet. And then I also did some light kind of brushings with my finger on the little metal rail around the base there. And I made that metal rail look like patinaed copper. And then, go through, wipe off all the excess wax. And she's finished. It turned out so beautifully. This actually is my fastest selling piece because it sold before I had it listed for $250. So that was super cool. This was a free table from Marketplace, and I'm just really thankful to have gotten it. Got it finished up, had it looking like Alice in Wonderland. It's super fun. So yeah, thanks for following along. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next week.